Well, welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. It's said to be the third most powerful storm ever to hit the United States, not just southern Florida, but the U.S. And we're going to ask a man who's an expert, what does this mean about the future? Where did it come from? How come it came? And we're going to have a tough winter because of it. That's the story. But this devastation, we don't know the full extent, but it's going to be in the billions and billions of dollars. You see pictures out of the Florida panhandle, and it's just horrible what happened. That storm, it was just devastating. It tore up an Air Force base, and it's moving up, of course, into into Georgia, then Alabama, and then into the Carolinas. And it'll come up this way, and it's moving very, very fast.
Well, at least 2 people have died, and Florida Governor Rick Scott says the priority now is rescuing any survivors that might be trapped in their homes. As Jenna Browder shows us, Tropical Storm Michael is still on the move.
Hurricane Michael tore through the Florida panhandle, leaving behind a path of destruction as it headed north to Georgia and the Carolinas.
It's gonna go, it's gonna go.
155-mile-per-hour winds sent the roof of this hotel crashing down.
It was terrifying, honestly.
And drone video shows this school torn apart by the storm. The high winds tore houses from their foundations and uprooted trees. Floodwaters from the storm surge filling the streets.
The dumbest thing I've ever done in 77 years is to stay through a hurricane. When they say evacuate again, I'm out of here.
Michael also ripped through parts of Georgia and Alabama. Now a tropical storm, it's moving north toward the Carolinas, raising concerns of more flooding and deadly tornadoes.
We're talking about a much weakened Michael right now, a tropical storm that is jetting its way off toward the north and the east at 21 miles per hour. But the impacts are far from finished. We're still talking about gusty winds and even some storm surge flooding here throughout the Big Bend as we're looking at 1 to 3 foot storm surge. Also here to the coastal Carolinas with the onshore flow, that potential of 1 to 3 foot storm surge as well.
Michael came so fast, many people didn't evacuate in time. In Florida, efforts are now focused on saving those still in danger.
As Hurricane Michael continues its destructive path through the panhandle and leaves our state, we're turning 100% of our focus on search and rescue and recovery.
The storm also top of mind for President Trump.
I want to send our thoughts and prayers of our entire nation to everyone in the path of Hurricane Michael, especially in the Florida panhandle where it's hitting and hitting hard.
Amid the destruction, CBN's Operation Blessing is on the ground, preparing to bring relief to victims. Just to put Michael into perspective, it was the 3rd largest hurricane to ever hit the U.S. mainland and the largest hurricane to impact the Florida panhandle. Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Jenna, Joe Bastardi is chief forecaster for Weather Bell Analytics. Joe, thank you so much for being with us. You were a little prescient in this one. You forecast something bad was going to happen. How'd you know about it?
Well, this is what I was made to do. And, you know, I always tell people that the foundation you stand on today was built yesterday to reach for tomorrow. And if you study weather patterns, and look, I have no life besides the good Lord, my family, and the weather, right? So this is all I do. If you go back and look at the past, you can see the setups for these kind of things. And back on September, well, first of all, our preseason forecast called for a big in-close season. In other words, very little activity in the areas that got hit down in the Caribbean last year, but all further north. And you see where all the storms are going. They're all further north this year. And so what happens is this. When we get closer on September 16th, I'm on the air with people saying, I'll see you in October. There's going to be something coming out of the Caribbean up into the Gulf of Mexico, and I'll be on again. And when we got to about 10 days, 12 days away, well, actually September 20th, modeling was showing that the activity in the tropics and the global tropical activity would shift into the Atlantic, Pacific and Atlantic basin, Eastern Pacific and Atlantic. So you can see this stuff moving across. And once we put that together, we started warning our clients. And then we saw the big ridge build up again over the Northeast United States. Alberto, Gordon, and Florence all came in when that ridge went up over the Northeast and into Southeast Canada. This is known as the Newfoundland Wheel by the old timers. I guess I'm getting to be one of them, 63, and the men that came before me, they taught me this. that whenever you get high pressure built in the Northwest Atlantic and the Northeastern United States in the hurricane season, folks, what has to happen underneath? Think about it. There's going to be a reduction of pressure. And when the pressure is reduced in a large scale over that warm water, you're going to get development. So it was right there. So what happened? By Sunday, we were forecasting a major hurricane hit on the Florida Panhandle. So we had a 3, perhaps a Category 4. Going into Florida from then. It was hardly even a tropical storm at that time. We did the same thing with Sandy, by the way. October 21st had that. And the reason is there's nothing magical about it. It has to do with trying to discern the long-term patterns, understanding what happened before, what's going on now, matching them up, and then use the great tools that science has developed to try to help us in seeing things like this. So that's what we did. It gets very frustrating, as you know. There's all sorts of distractions today. The world is full of noise, right? So there's noise about the Supreme Court nomination Sunday and Monday. So media is not paying attention. Tuesday, Nikki Haley resigns. Media is, oh yeah, there's a hurricane down there. Yesterday, of course, you saw the market crash 800, and so by the time the hurricane made landfall, you see the media going to the market, right? So what happens is, I think that a lot of people got caught by surprise. What happens when there's a surprise? You got to go look for something to blame. Who do you blame? Climate change. It all just keeps moving along in the same circle. And so, you know, maybe I'm just one of these guys that looks at linkage. Actually, this is shameless advertisement. I have a book out called The Climate Chronicles that describes what's going on today, where this is very little about this is actually about science and weather. Most of it is about other things, and that's what you see with these storms.
Joe, I want to ask you something about the winter. Are we going to have does this have anything to do with the fact we may have a colder than usual winter or more mild? What does it say?
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. I actually put this on Twitter. People on my site, Weather Bell, they see all this stuff that's going on. My professors at Penn State, when I was back there in the 70s, said, you have to explain the why before the what, so when it happens, people know why. You got to tell them before. What happens is this, folks, the same oscillations in the ocean that you will see in September and October cause enhanced tropical cyclone activity. If what we call the Madden-Julian oscillation, it's indirectly caused by the oceans and the state of the oceans. If that repeats itself in the winter, the same pattern that is causing this now repeats itself in the winter, what will happen is the winter gets cold and stormy. So let's go back and look at when there were major hurricanes from Florida into the Gulf of Mexico in October. You line up those years, you look, it's got a cold winter. The fact of the matter is that back last winter, we saw something go on, and we said, look, there's going to be what we call Modoki El Nino for the next winter. So this is 9 months away. Predict a big rainfall season in California in March and April, hence the wildfire season. You grow a lot of stuff in California because of a lot of rain. It dries out, they get big wildfires. It also meant a hot summer. Right? So we have all this, we move from one thing to another. We want wildfires, summer, the hurricane season, all point at this cold, stormy winter, because all I do is line up past years when that happens. So we'll see if it happens. Only God knows tomorrow. The rest of us, no, that's absolutely, you guys, hey, listen, you know what? It's the humility thing. So the atmosphere teaches you that, and it's a good tool for you.
Joe, you're terrific. Thank you so much. Joe Bastardi, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, you better hold on to your fur coat, though, PETA notwithstanding. Yeah. You know, because it may be a very cold winter. So that's interesting, isn't it?
It's fascinating. Yeah. It is a very distinctive study.
Joe knew that thing was coming, and nobody else. They all said, well, as he said, there was so much in the news. There was Kavanaugh, and there was this and that and the other, and the stock market took a dip, and so they weren't listening. Yeah. But now it's too late, but it was devastating. The third worst in the history of the United States. I mean, that millibar went down, you know, and so forth. But I don't know. We haven't had a chance to get people really out on the scene to find out the full extent of the damage and how much the recovery is going to cost. But as I saw some figures, there are about 800,000 or 900,000 people without power. And they were adding them up because there'll be Alabama, there'll be Georgia, and maybe even North Carolina.
Well, and this kind of devastation isn't something that it ends and you just fix it and recover. I mean, you're talking about a long time.
Well, our Operation Blessing is going to be down there, and recovery will take years, but our Operation Blessing is already setting up to help, and John Jessup has that.
That's right, Pat. CBN's Operation Blessing teams are on the scene in Florida, meeting with pastors and churches to coordinate volunteer efforts to help those in need. Here's OB's Tom Wiley from the Panhandle.
I'm Tom Wiley with Operation Blessing Disaster Relief. We sent an advance team here just yesterday, starting in Pensacola, and we've been making our way to Panama City to assess the damage of this hurricane. Operation Blessing Disaster Relief is staging equipment and people and other resources as we look at coming into this area to help the residents affected by this storm. We've been driving down numerous highways today, weaving through downed trees and down power lines, and seeing the damage firsthand. This area has been hard hit.
Well, we've noticed a lot of trees down, power lines down, metal flying, truck lifting off the ground. I mean, we just scared to death, man.
Operation Blessing will continue to work with our ministry partners to get down into this area, to get to the right place, to provide the right amount of assistance for the families and communities affected by this disaster. If you'd like to learn more about volunteering, please visit Operation Blessing's website at ob.org. God bless you.
Pat, Operation Blessing always delivering timely and much needed help.
And they've got a mobile kitchen. They're going to feed as much as 2,000 meals a day. We've got a construction trailer filled with tools to be used by volunteers to help hurricane victims rebuild. 2 box trucks full of emergency relief supplies. And I know it's not as much as you'd like, but we're there sometimes in the point of urgent need to help people. So if you want to help in this time, you can send your, quote, thoughts and prayers, as the president said, but we can also send some money and help them. And it's Disaster Relief Fund, CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia. And we don't wait for some bureaucracy to tell us to do it. We just do it right away. And we work with churches, we work with relief organizations, because people in that panhandle are, listen, folks, they're hurting. They will have lost everything. And you look at those pictures, they're absolutely devastating. John?
Pat, in economic news, Wall Street is hoping that the worst of a brutal correction will soon be over. Wednesday's sell-off marks 5 straight days stocks have been down. The Dow fell 830 points, a little over 3%. The S&P 500 was down just over 3.25%, and the technology-heavy Nasdaq took the biggest hit, plunging more than 4%. Some analysts are blaming rising interest rates for the sell-off. President Trump blasted the Federal Reserve for raising those rates. And, Pat, other analysts say the market was due for a correction.
That has been keeping the rates artificially low for so many years. They had to bring them up, but I'm telling you, it's really tough. But remember that big market crash, about a quarter of the Dow went down. I mean, this is 3%, so I mean, it's not the end of the world. It just sounds like a lot of numbers because the Dow is up so big. It's 8,000 points, and you lose 800 out of that. It's not as much. It's 3%.
You think it'll correct pretty quickly?
I hope so. I think the economy is so strong, and I think that those tech companies have just gone crazy. I mean, Amazon and Netflix and these others have gone up so high, and they were due for a correction. Google and others. I mean, they're just, what do they call it, alphabet. I mean, there's so many. But do I think so? I would say yes. I think we'll have it. But the economy is basically strong. You couldn't have asked for anything better in terms of employment. The unemployment is at record lows. Black unemployment, Hispanic unemployment. It's really a very, well, we'll see what happens. We got less than 30 days for the midterm elections. A lot of stuff's going on.